we got to talk the failure of the Senate Republicans refusing to convict Trump. I'm not shocked at all. I'm not surprised at all. Uh, this is obviously who the Republicans are. They'll never go away from that. They'll never stray away from that. And they did what they do. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it wasn't a surprise. I wasn't shocked. You know me, I'm a believer in giving out flowers where flowers are due. So there are 17 brave Republicans, 10 in the House, which we gave out flowers to a couple of weeks ago. And now we have 7 new Republicans who seem to found the courage to do what's right for our democracy. They don't always do what's right all the time. And I know that some of their policies are problematic. But I want to give a couple of these folks some flowers today. Obviously,
Do we have to?
Yes, we have to.
Why? Why?
Because
They should have been calling this out years ago.
Of course
Why?
they should have.
And the ones you're going to mention, they voted for Trump 80-some% of the time.
And
Do they deserve their? All right.
To be fair, for some like Lisa Murkowski, she's been calling out Trump for a minute. She voted for the first impeachment. This is not her first time at the rodeo. Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, Susan Collins from Maine. Which listen, I
really?
I was
giving her flowers.
Wait a minute. I was one of those folks that wanted her to lose her reelection. I was one of those folks that gave money to her opponent, right? I was one of those folks who were like, we've got to get rid of Susan Collins because she's wishy-washy at best. But courage is courage is courage. And for her, bravo.
Courage.
She gets a flower.
Courage. Susan Collins gets courage? Okay.
If you look at the grant, listen, I'm not going to say, I'm going to hold on to my
principle. Go on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Right. But like, I just think when you look at the fact that 43 Republicans, given all the evidence, given the videos, given the fact that the floor impeachment managers made such a powerful, illustrative, successful, open and shut case to the point where when Mitch McConnell spoke on the floor for all 40 minutes, which I watched, he basically repeated everything they said. But he says that it's not the job of politicians to hold politicians accountable. It's the job of our justice system to hold politicians accountable. And he's 100% wrong, right? So for the 7 brave Republicans that said, no, it's the job of us as elected leaders to hold other elected leaders accountable, which to them seems to be a novel concept. Listen,
brave. You're calling them brave now. They went from flowers to bravery.
No, I said novel concept. It was a novel.
No, you said those brave Republicans.
Yes, listen. You have to listen. You already know how I operate. You Clay, we've been friends for a long time. You know exactly. And your audience now, I'm friends with everybody in the Clay Kane audience. They know how I operate. My standard is reasonability, right? My standard has been, will continue to be, has always been reasonability. And in this case, reasonability is impeach this man because he violated our democracy. And 43 cowards, they couldn't, even though he put their life in danger, they couldn't find the courage to impeach somebody that put their own lives in danger. When they were texting their family on January 6th saying, I might not make it home for dinner because there are domestic terrorists invading our capital, and the fact that you can't turn around and punish the guy who caused the domestic terrorists to siege the Capitol shows that y'all are cowards. So the opposite of cowards are folks that are brave. No?
I wouldn't give them that much credit to say brave. I mean, that's not what I would
do.
You don't get time and a half for showing up to work on time.
No.
What they literally did was finally showed up to work on time. So what? Who cares? I'm not giving you a bunch of credit for finally doing the right thing.
What word would you give them if they're? Because we know they're not cowards. We agree on that point. So what word would you give them?
I would say that they did the right thing, but I wouldn't say it's. I mean, we're paying them to do the right thing, and they've been doing the wrong thing over and over. Didn't Lisa Murkowski challenge Merrick Garland under the Obama administration from being appointed? Didn't she pull a stunt like that?
No,
I'm just going to my Lisa Murkowski history. I believe that she challenged Merrick. I could be wrong. Let me look that up for a minute. But nonetheless, what I'm saying is
she definitely challenged Brett Kavanaugh. That we know. and she voted against Brett Kavanaugh. I can't speak to.
Yes,
I mean,
she did. Lisa Murkowski, Alaska Republican. This is back in 2016. Lisa Murkowski said the next president should choose the Supreme Court justice to replace Scalia. This was in February of
now
2016.
I'm not here to defend any of these. All these
I
people.
know. I'm just saying. Let's look at their. So what I'm saying, she was trifling in 2016. That was despicable that they blocked Merrick Garland, and you know that, Richard. That was just
I
deplorable.
agree.
And they pushed through Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh, whatever. But I think for me, it's they finally did the right thing. They deserve no credit. If I show up on this radio show and read your name the right way, I'm not brave. So I don't know. Maybe I
Well, you know,
866-801-8255.
but I think there's an undercurrent story happening here, right? So Richard
Okay, go ahead.
Burr of North Carolina voted to impeach Donald Trump. 24 hours later, the Republican Party of North Carolina censures Richard Burr. Richard Burr,
Right.
he's not the only person that's been censured. Cindy McCain has also been censured by the Arizona Republican Party. Governor Ducey, the Arizona governor of Republican governor of Arizona, has been censured by the Republican Party. Liz Cheney, the Wyoming Republican Party, has censured her. So these Republicans are speaking out, right? And now, don't get me wrong, it took them 4 years too long to speak out against Donald Trump and his antics. But to speak out and then to have your party censure you for doing the right thing just tells you where we are as a country. And it's not about whether or not America is going to change or America is going to do better. This is who we are. We are a country that we believe that if we don't get our way, if people in this country don't get their way, you could do whatever you want without consequences, right? You can invade the Capitol without consequences. You can wear a mask. You could choose not to wear a mask and infect others with COVID-19 without consequences. And finally, some Republicans have found the balls and the courage to say, no, you can no longer operate as if there's no consequences to your actions. Sadly, it wasn't 17 of them to impeach this man, right? And I'm not going to give any Republicans any passes for the fact that it took y'all 4 years to finally stand up to him, because if you stood up to him 3 years ago, we wouldn't have been here. But you have to acknowledge where folks make right decisions. And for these 7 Republicans who said, I heard the evidence was overwhelming, especially in the case of Richard Burr. Because remember, I talked to you about this idea that Republicans are going to take this veer right and say this constitutional argument. Richard Burr's, I'm not defending him, but I'm saying his reasoning was, look, we as a body, well, I disagreed with the body's ruling around the constitutionality of this case, but once the body ruled that it was constitutional, I put that on the shelf and I moved on to the evidence. And based on this evidence, Donald Trump incited a riot in the United States Capitol, and thus he should be impeached. And sadly, there weren't other Republicans who followed that mindset. They were basically like Mitch McConnell's argument was, yes, the body that I've been a member of for decades.
May I just add really quick, and I want you to continue? Richard Burr has voted with Trump
Oh, I agree.
89% of the
I'm not
time.
giving him any praise for him voting for
89% of the time. So go ahead.
I'm not giving him any praise. To be very clear, before the callers call in and they're going to disagree with me, and that's okay, right? I am not praising Richard Burr for past actions. I am not praising Richard Burr for his past voting record. I am acknowledging in this moment, Richard Burr made the right decision, and for making the right decision based on the evidence and based on the facts, because for Republicans, they want to have their opinions without the facts attached. That is something that should be acknowledged, because we live in a world where literally Republicans will walk around factless. They don't want any facts. They just want to live in their opinion. And their opinion is the only thing that matters. The fact, sans the facts, sans the data, right? Sans the evidence, sans the video footage, sans all of that. They just want to live in their opinion. That Donald Trump, I guess, is the next creation. Like I don't know what they think he is. I guess they think he's some sort of leader of the Republican Party. He leads some quote unquote movement. To me, as somebody, as you know, Clay, I study elections and I study trends. I don't understand this following Donald Trump blindly because you want to maintain Donald Trump's base, because even in the best world, if we're doing simple mathematics, Donald Trump's base only gets you 74 million voters. that means you're 7 million short, right? That means you're 7 million short of a presidential, not to mention the fact that you've lost, Donald Trump has decayed the Republicans' inroads into the
You
suburbs. They
know, I
absolutely.
hear you. I hear you, brother, but I might give them an ounce of credit if they would have went to Mitch McConnell months and months ago and said, listen, we demand, because we're Republicans and we claim to care about voting and we claim to care about voter fraud, we demand, Mitch McConnell, that you allow us to vote on the Voting Rights Act. How great would it have been to see Richard Burr and Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins write some letter saying that there is factual information that votes are being suppressed, and we demand you allow us to vote on that. I might have given them 0.02% credit if they said, listen, the George Floyd Policing Act is a good thing. We demand you allow us to vote on that. You are the Senate Majority Leader.
No, wait, I want to correct you. He is the Senate Minority Leader,
Well,
former
he was.
Minority
He
Leader.
was the Senate. I'm talking about when he was the Senate Majority Leader. I would give them more credit if they went to their colleagues and they said, the answer is no. We must stand up against this white supremacist. So if they're doing these things in their little vacuum, I want to know what kind of advocacy did they do to talk to other Republicans, and
But
what were
let me
they
be very
doing
clear.
before? So for me,
Well,
uh, it's just it's not shocking. And the ones who did something right for the first time in 4 years, or the second time maybe, I don't give them any credit, because at the end of the day, they are still a party. A party. Whether it's, I know Meghan McCain believes he should be impeached. So what? At the end of the day, you still support a party that is packed with Trump enablers, which basically makes you an enabler adjacent. So no cookie from me. You still support this party. And if you believe this is so insidious, this is so terrible, then I'm assuming you're going to leave the party. But this is a party that at this point is anti-voting rights, is anti-poor, and is pro-insurrections, incited by, reportedly, allegedly, just my opinion, the President of the United States. Because if it were the other way around, Democrats, we cannibalize each other so easily. If Obama, which he never would, did anything like that, you would have saw nearly every major Democrat saying he has to go. So yeah, I no, because you have still been a part of this party that represents all these elements of hate. Trump is the hate that Republicans created.
see, now
So
this is where I beg to differ. I think that Trump is a reflection of the hate, but the hate has always been there. Trump is just a mirror of what the American people actually feel.
no,
There's
we
seven,
agree.
where
He's
there's
the hate
74.
that Republicans created. He's
Yeah,
the hate. He's it's been Nixon, Reagan, Bush, Trump. What's the next one? My God.
74 million Americans that voted for Trump. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everybody who voted for Trump is racist, but I'm saying that every racist voted for Trump. Right? If you are a white supremacist, you voted for Donald Trump. Right? If you are somebody who belongs to the Proud Boys, you voted for Trump. If you are a former member, current member, applying to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan, you voted for Trump. If you're an oath seeker, you voted for Trump. And
Well,
so
Richard,
we have,
let me ask you this though: how would you define somebody who is a racist?
how would I define something as a
Yeah,
racist?
if your vote means something, if your vote represents something, if you voted for a white supremacist, what does that make you? If this were 1964 and you were voting for Barry Goldwater, what does that make you? If this were 1968 and you were voting for George Wallace, what does that make you? So how would you define somebody who is voting for, at this point, maybe in 2016 they didn't know, but at this point, an obvious, explicit, stone cold racist? How would you
So look,
define a
I
racist
want
then?
these people, and maybe it's because like y'all know I'm a Fox News contributor. I don't speak conservative. I'm not a member of the Conservative Party, but I understand conservatism because I understand Fox. And so my theory of the case on that, and I'm glad you asked that question. My theory of the case is this: I think there are a group of Americans, and let me be very clear of how I come to this theory. I come to this theory because we as a country, whether it's LGBTQ rights, whether it's fighting for women's rights, whether it's fighting for African American and Black folks' rights, we as a country, we always think, I think our lawmakers, let's be very clear, our lawmakers think if we pass a law, we've solved a problem. And our lawmakers refuse to do and lead the country in the work around reconciliation. And when I say reconciliation, reconciliation is a time for us to sit down at the table, reconcile our wrongs, and actually have a conversation about definitions, right? And because when you reconcile, you say, here is what I feel as somebody who was done wrong to or who was oppressed. Here's how you're oppressing me. And then the person says, okay, we acknowledge that. And based on this, here's what we were going to do to ensure that this oppression doesn't happen anymore. And I think because we've never done the work of reconciliation in this country, for some Americans, not me, not you, not the folks listening to this show, but for some Americans, racism is only seen in its most extreme form. It can only be defined as its most extreme form. So if you have a Klan outfit in your closet
and screaming the N-word,
right,
yeah, which that's not racist. It isn't that simple.
You're deemed to be a racist. I think there are Republicans who hold those values, and it's because it's not, I wouldn't necessarily say, and part of the job is not for Black folks to do, but it's a job of a country to do the education for their public around what it means. And the best example of this is Germany. If you go to Germany today, there is a robust curriculum around what the Nazis did, why it's wrong, and why it's illegal, right? There's a clear conversation. People learn about it in school. If you go to Berlin, there are monuments and museums and talks and statues, and all of the concentration camps are living shrines to the folks who died because of the Holocaust, but they're also living shrines to what happens when you don't define things and you don't make it clear. We haven't done that work in this country. So there are a group of Americans who are walking around here not knowing what racism is, and they vote in elections. And it's not our job as Black folks to do this work. It's a job of government and civil society to say, we won't take this. We won't tolerate this type of behavior. And we haven't done that work. So there are.
But do you think? Let me ask you a question though. Do you think somebody not knowing what racism is absolves them from racism?
No, I'm not.
That way they can't be racist if they don't know what it is.
I'm not saying that it absolves them of racism. What I'm saying is, we have the government. I think government, civil society, the public school system. We have a job to educate folks, and there is an inherent attempt to make sure that this education is as whitewashed as possible or as gaslit as possible, which is why in textbooks all across the country, you have kids reading that they treated the slaves nicely. And as long as
that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves.
Yeah, and Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, or that slaves were, treated very well when they were building the Capitol or whatever, or many various different variations of how.
But Richard, I want to just.
And until we deal with the truth of that history, then
which is not going to happen anytime soon. And Trump was blocking that happening.
Absolutely.
Trump literally started a patriotic commission. But let me just say this. I've said it before. I'll say it again. The truth of the matter is that most white people in this country, the majority of white folks in this country, they are racist. The majority of men in this country are sexist. The majority of straight folks in this country are homophobic. So I always say, one of the first things we have to do is not have a neurological breakdown when you hear the word racism. More than likely you are, because of everything that you just said, Richard. You are programmed to be that way. We are not taught about cultural contributions from Black folks, from Native American folks. So you are programmed, you are brainwashed to be that way, to be a racist. So I say, if you hear the word racist, do not lose your mind. It's not saying you're a Klan member. It's not saying you want to hang somebody from a tree. You may not even be using the N-word, but you could still most definitely be a racist because you have been programmed that way. You have been taught that way. Therefore, I say, you damn Skippy, if you voted for an explicit racist, and Trump is beyond a racist. He's more of a white supremacist. He's more of a white nationalist, really. But if you are voting for this man, you are racist. Now, don't have a breakdown. Don't say, I'm not calling you Jeffrey Dahmer. I'm not calling you Ted Bundy. I'm saying, oh, yeah, you are racist because you are a white person who is enabling racism. Shawam. It's that simple. And if we don't make that concession, And if you want to say, oh, well, not really, I don't think so. And I'm not saying you're doing that. But if we can't get to a basic level that if you are enabling racism, you're a racist. And you may not understand that, but hopefully you can get some kind of grasp on it. So that's what I always say. Most people are, because that's how they're programmed.
And I want to pick up on your point of that you may not understand that. And the fact
Yeah.
that, and I'm not asking anybody to sympathize with those that understand. I'm saying that it requires some empathy. We have to empathize for those that don't understand.
No, I don't. Why?
You don't have, no.
I got to empathize with them.
You don't have to. But hear me out. But when we're talking about voting, right, which voting is about numbers, take out your feelings, take about how you feel about white supremacy. Voting is about plurality. Who wins?
No, it's not just about numbers. No, voting is about politics. Voting is about race. Voting is about class. It's not just about numbers.
In the end, Clay, the person who wins is the person who has a majority of the votes, correct?
But in the beginning, in the middle, in the end, it is about race, politics, and class. That's what voting is really about.
I think it's a misnomer, and I'll stand by this. I think it's a misnomer to say to folks who live in homogeneous communities, right, where they don't see color, and there's a lot of Americans that is their reality. I've been to these towns, I've been to these cities.
Hold on one second. You mean they only see white people? Not that they don't see color. They only see white people. Yeah, but they are seeing other white people.
I'm not saying let me be very clear. When I say they don't see color, I'm saying they don't walk out on their street and they see, like when I walk out on my block in Washington, D.C., and I turn to the left, I see a black person. When I turn to the right, I see a black person. So thus, I am immersed in black culture and black experiences because I live around African Americans.
Therefore, that's my point, Richard. If you're only seeing other white people, that might make you a racist. But don't have a neurological breakdown about it.
No, I agree.
It's not saying that you're a Klan member.
But I think when you approach, my theory of the case is when you approach these voters with this mindset of,
it makes them uncomfortable.
No, it's not about making them uncomfortable. My job is to persuade them to vote my way and agree with me on policy.
Right? Listen, I'm not saying Joe Biden or Barack Obama should say you're all racist. I'm not saying that. That may not be the way to play the politics game. But for me, the kind of work that I do, I want to say the majority of white folks in this country are racist. The majority of rich folks in this country are the majority of us are classist for people who have less money than us. The majority of men are sexist. That's just the truth. Because like you just said, for a lot of white folks who are only around other white people, they're not getting exposure. That's probably going to make you a racist because you're not getting any kind of exposure. And then what do you do when you're at the voting booth? Or what do you do when you leave Ketchum, Idaho, and you come to New York? What do you do when you're absorbing media images that just shows black folks as criminals? It makes you a racist. Go ahead.
I hear that, but I think I'll give a great example, right? In my own family, right? As somebody who's a black gay person from a Jamaican family, when I came out initially, there were people in my family who were extremely homophobic.
Absolutely.
Right? But through conversation and through knowing somebody who is from the LGBT plus community, they grew and they had a change of heart, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't approach any of them. One, I wasn't out here like handing out leaflets about like don't be a homophobe. What I was just my sheer representation and my sheer part of being a member of this family and their acknowledgement of, well, there's not really much different about him besides how he chooses to love and how he chooses to identify. And then they begin to have a change of heart
and they evolve.
And as a result of their change of heart, now many of them have turned in from being people who were once homophobic to now being advocates for the LGBTQIA plus community. And I think the same can be said for those folks. There are some folks out there who, in the 74 million, not all of them, but there's a percentage of those folks out there that through education and through conversations can be moved to say, wow, I really am somebody who internalizes my privilege.
That is possible.
And I better do my part to break it down. But if we write these people off, all of them.
I'm not writing anybody off, though. You're misinterpreting me.
Losing votes.
I'm not writing anybody. I'm not saying because you're a racist, I'm writing you off. I'm saying, damn it, accept that you're a racist and then do the work. If you can't accept that you're a racist, if you can't accept that you are enabling a racist, you're not going to be able to do the
I
work.
agree with that.
And here we are having a conversation on how we can convince these Trump voters to think the right way.
No,
I ain't thinking about them. I ain't thinking about them.
I'm not saying convince Trump voters, right? Because if you saw very clearly what Joe Biden was able to do in this past, and I'll be very clear, let's take it outside of Joe Biden, what organizing was able to do, because Joe Biden is just an impact of the fact that you had amazing, dope organizers, many of them Black women, many of them women overall, right? Because you have Black women, you had Latinx women, majority, predominantly Black women leading the charge. And they were joined by Latinx women. They were joined by white women. I give you Cindy McCain, who was like, this guy does not represent.
I don't care about Cindy McCain.
No, I'm using her as an example.
Okay.
Gee,
you like, Clay, calm your. I care about the Native Americans in Arizona who showed up 95% and got Joe Biden in.
And there was also indigenous Americans in Arizona that showed up. But joined, you have to acknowledge that there was a coalition that got Joe Biden elected. The coalition was led by Black women in the front of the line.
I'm just tired of hearing Cindy McCain's name.
Right, behind Black women were Black men. Behind Black men were Latinx men and women. And behind them were college-educated white folks, some who had voted for Trump, some who had voted for Bush, some possibly who had voted for Reagan. But they realized that they had this realization. It might have been because of the George Floyd tape. It might have been because of Donald Trump's antics. It might have been because of Charlottesville. It might have been because of Trayvon Martin. It could be various reasons. It could be because they had a conversation about white privilege at their workplace. Many of these people who were once entrenched in the Republican ideology said, there's something wrong with my current way of thinking. Maybe it's time I reevaluate.
But it wasn't that many, though. It was small percentages. The reason why we won this election is Black folks in Philly, is Black folks in Atlanta, is Black folks in Detroit, it's Black folks in Milwaukee. I don't think we can give a couple percentage points. I think Joe Biden got, I mean, first of all, you know this. No Democrat has won the white vote since 1964.
Right. No. Listen, if you hear me,
so it wasn't like significant.
As you know, Clay, I am an economist by training, and thus my language was very specific. I didn't say white folk. I said there was a group of college-educated white folk. I'm parsing the demographics because it matters. When you look at the numbers, and I've looked at all the numbers from both the 2018 election as well as the 2020 election, what you saw was the Democratic Party over time has started to make these amazing gains with single, unmarried, college-educated white women. We're winning this group of voters 2-1. Now we're winning them 3-1, right? A whole swath of voters. Were they the tipping point? No. But were they part of the coalition? Absolutely. And elections and winning elections are about building successful coalitions, right? This coalition was built by Black women. This coalition was supported by Black women. Black women organized it. They were joined by other members of the coalition. And one group in this coalition was college-educated white women who brought along, many of them, their college-educated brothers, right? And their college-educated husbands and their college-educated nieces, nephews, and et cetera. And so my point here is if we I don't believe in this idea of throwing out a whole group of people and saying we can't win them over. I think we need to be having more provocative conversations like the one we're having now to their audience to be like, look, we're not, you could come back from racism. Our God is a redeeming God, and he believes in forgiveness, right? And he believes in reconciliation. And because America has actually not had a conversation around reconciliation, that's why even the Democratic Party, right, and Democratic elected officials are showing up with blackface yearbook photos, and all this stuff is coming out the woodworks because we refuse to do the hard work around reconciliation and having a conversation on what racism is and how we fix it.